go.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, Sharon. It's nice to see you, my old friend.
Nice to see you too. It's been a while.
It has. It's always too long.
I know. So, how was your Easter holiday here in Flemington?
It's great. Well, I like the weather change, so that's a good thing.
We're finally getting some nice weather. It's about time.
I know.
Yeah, it always makes everything better.
Well, thanks for being interested in sitting down and having a conversation.
Well, thanks for taking the time. I know you're very busy these days. You wrote a spectacular book. I'm going to ask you all the questions about it. We're going to get into some details, and I want to hear how it all came about and just what inspired you.
Cool. So, should we hold the book up? We'll
Sure,
hold the book up.
yes.
Yay! Hold the book up. It's like the closest I'll ever get to, I think, giving birth, because you find out that you get the contract for it, and you're all excited and enthusiastic.
Yes.
And then it's like 9 months of sort of pain, I guess, and then at the end it's particularly difficult to get it finished, and then you have to nurture it for a long period of time. But anyway, so it's my third book, and excited about it. Been in the field of human relations for 30 years. And as I've looked at a lot of the clients I've worked with, there's just dysfunction often rooted in us not having straight conversations with each other.
That's right.
I think there's a lot of dysfunction related to either not having the conversation or having it go badly. And the number one thing that people do when issues arise is we avoid it.
Right.
And we say things to ourselves such as, it's not going to make a difference. Sharon and I have had this conversation before. What's the point of having it again?
Right.
Or it can make things worse. Or we say things like, well, time will make it better. But unlike acne, these issues don't usually clear up on their own. If anything, they get worse.
Yes, if left untreated.
Yes, if left untreated, undealt with. And so we know, especially around important topics today, sometimes we don't want to discuss them, but the alternative is not discussing them, and actually not addressing them means we don't make any progress around them.
That's right. And what a timely topic. I mean, especially these days where everyone is having these uncomfortable conversations. How did you even begin to do the research for this book, and where is it all coming from, and what inspired you to write this book?
So I'll share a personal note, because this has always been in the background for me of this work. My father and his brother got into an argument over a family business when my father was in his early 20s. They never spoke again.
Oh my goodness.
I never met my first uncle, and I've never met my first cousins. My only uncle. And
not a good way to have a family dinner, right?
No.
Not a good way to go through the holidays. And speaking of holidays, right?
What's interesting is I've even reached out to them, and they have no interest in connecting. So
that's hard. Yeah.
So I think about
it's a personal experience that inspired you.
Yeah, and I mean, but all of us, I think, have these stories. Like, I heard one literally yesterday, Sharon, in which somebody sent an email, to great Aunt Susie for somebody's bar mitzvah, and she never got it. So she found out she wasn't invited, and the one thought, well, she's not replying, and the other one thought, I didn't get it. And so it creates all of this dysfunction.
So much confusion, just spiraling from a misunderstanding.
Yeah. And especially in a family, but also work. It's not just the impact that this has on the two of us. It's the impact it has on our family members. It has an impact on the teams with which we work.
That's right.
So my feeling has been, and the place that I come from is skill development. So can I help people learn the skills to engage in productive conversations? Because I think the number one reason people don't have the conversation is because they don't even know how to start it.
Right. It's scary too. If you approach it, as you mentioned before, it can go in numerous different ways. Some of them not so good. And how do you come back from that? So just even approaching it sometimes is very intimidating. And especially in the workplace where relationships are really the bedrock of companies.
Yeah.
As you point out in your book.
No question. And I mean, one of the most basic things that I deal with in companies is simply addressing employee performance issues.
Yes.
And it sounds simple, but so many managers just view that as a conflict and avoid. So a couple of things around that. One is, if you're not comfortable giving constructive feedback to an employee, you probably should not be a manager.
I agree.
The second is, I often think about putting myself in the other person's shoes. And if I was underperforming, would I want to know that from my boss?
Right.
And of course.
Right.
Another thing is, I think you can give feedback to anyone about anything if you come from the place of caring about them.
Exactly. How you preface the message is just as important as the message itself.
100%. So how I frame it. So I could say, Sharon, your success is really important to me. And
I like that.
I view my job as making you successful.
Right.
And so in that context, there's some feedback I'd like to share with you.
That's such a nice way to preface it. Like, I feel like I'm a teammate of yours now. We're in this together. Isn't that so much better than... That's right. That's right. So important. Paul, tell me a little bit about your background. First of all, I'm going to say that we've known each other for a very long time. We grew up in the same hometown. I've known your family growing up. Tell me a little bit about your background and what got you into this type of work.
Sure. So this is we're coming to you from the one bridge town of three bridges. And
beautiful town.
It's a great town. Like the road outside is Old York Road. We're 50 miles from New York and 50 miles from Philadelphia.
Right smack in the middle.
We are. It's cool. But
isn't this the best hometown? Isn't this the best place to grow up?
It's a great place to grow up. Hunterdon County was voted, right, one of the best places in the country.
Number one in the country. That's right.
It's so
That's
cool.
Right.
Yes, I have. It was one of those great stories where I would walk to the elementary school up here, and we had a dog, a mutt, right, from the farm. But I grew up on a 100-acre farm, as you know.
It's a beautiful farm.
And the dog would sometimes follow us to school. And so Mrs. Miller, who was the administrative person there, would call my mother and go, "Barbara, puppy dog's in the principal's office. You have to come get her." So, like, if that's not small town,
Exactly. When the dog's in the principal's office, you're coming from a small town.
It's great. So I grew up here, and on a farm. My father's first generation Italian and American, and he would say, if you want to eat 7 days a week, you work 7 days a week.
Strong work ethic, yeah.
Really strong work ethic. Literally, doing the animals before school and doing them when you came back. Just. Kids used to love the summer. I didn't necessarily like the summer. We got 1 day off, July 4th. That was it. That was it. So in some ways, going back to school was, yes, desirable. So that's on my paternal side, and I do have, as you know, a legacy on my maternal side.
Yeah, I want to hear more about that legacy.
So my maternal grandfather, Ludwig Bemelmans, wrote and illustrated Madeline, children's book.
One of the most famous books. And what a background he had. You were telling me a little bit about his background. And just all the people with whom he's met, and just what an illustrious life.
He was both my grandfathers were the American dream in different ways. My grandfather, Bemelmans, never made it past 6th grade, and he just came from Austria. And this was World War I time frame. So my great-grandmother put him on a ship and sent him to Ellis Island because...
By himself?
By himself. Because otherwise he would have been... He was 16.
Holy smokes.
Because otherwise he would have been put in as a foot soldier in World War I because he had no education.
Huh.
And so he landed on Ellis Island in Christmas Eve of 1914. He was supposed to be met by an uncle who never showed up. He thought that it was America. His image was cowboys and Indians, so he thought he was going to be met with, a bunch of Indians and such like that.
The brigade comes and meets with him.
Yeah, so he was kind of terrified, as you might imagine.
Understandably, yes.
And then he worked his way up as in working busboys and such in hotels, and he worked his way up to a captain at the Four Seasons.
And did anyone ever meet him at the island? Was he by himself?
I think eventually his uncle reconnected with him. But yeah, it was probably pretty scary times, and going through the Depression. And he didn't actually. Madeline was not written until 1939, so he was already 40, 41 when it came out, and he actually hadn't achieved success. He'd achieved some level of success prior to that, but obviously that was his big kind of break. And he wrote 40 books. About half children's and half adult. Many of the adults most of them were New York Times bestsellers. And he traveled the world.
Oh my goodness.
And he just, it was amazing.
What was his inspiration for Madeline?
So it was
probably one of his most famous
So he
books.
was on the island of, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but Corsico. And there was only one motorized vehicle on the island, which was a bread delivery truck. And he was on a bicycle and it hit him. And he ended up in the hospital, and as he lay there in the hospital, there was a little girl next to him was having her appendix out.
Oh.
And so that was kind of the origin. And then the character of Madeline is really a blend of both my mother and my grandmother. My grandmother's name was Madeleine, but that was difficult to rhyme, so he went with Madeline.
Talk about a real break.
Yeah, right, a real break, exactly.
That's one way to get it.
Exactly.
What a story.
So, yeah, but he had just all these adventures. I mean,
tell us about some of these adventures. I want to hear about some of these adventures.
Well, he was a correspondent for a number of different magazines, and he was covering a story down in Cuba, and it was dinner with Castro, and all of the silverware was solid gold, and so
Cuba back in the day. I mean, that was like the heyday. Yes.
It was surrounded by armed guards, but he ended up. There's a great picture of my mother having a drink with Ernest Hemingway, which is very cool.
Your mom had a drink with Ernest Hemingway.
Great picture. And then he was good friends with Onassis, and so he actually painted on his yacht. Like, so there's a great letter from Onassis inviting my grandfather and my mother to have Thanksgiving on the yacht, and he painted the murals in those kids' rooms. And then actually he had become very good friends with Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. And the day after my grandfather passed, she goes to their apartment in New York, and my grandmother had gone out for something and just left a note on the door that says, "Jackie, let yourself in." So, I mean, it's like very casual friends.
An American icon, just let yourself in.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. But unfortunately, I never got to meet him. He passed before I was born. So, but I certainly he
certainly has such a profound
presence.
legacy. Yes.
Yeah.
Even being in Manhattan, I felt that one of my favorite bars was Bemelman's Bar in the iconic Carlisle Hotel.
Yeah.
And I know that your grandfather had a little bit of a hand in some of the artwork in that hotel.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. So
tell us that story.
Yeah, so he got to, in exchange for living at the Carlisle for a year and a half, which I'm not sure anyone else has gotten to do that. He painted the walls and the ceilings of the Bemelman's, what's known as the Bemelman's Bar now.
It's a great bar, one of the best bars in Manhattan.
And they make great martinis. His thing is he loved martinis. So, and he said he liked them so dry that he just wanted the bartender to take the cork of the vermouth bottle and wave it over the top of it, so you can have a Bemelman's martini.
Did he do this while he was painting all the?
Probably he liked to drink apparently and smoke a good cigar. So he led quite a life.
I think cool. He had quite a talent. I mean, I don't know if it was because of the great drinking, but he did a wonderful job. I've been there, and it's just beautiful.
Well, I think what's amazing too is that to have written 40 books and in English. And rhymed in English. When he came to the country, he didn't speak English.
That's right.
So he wrote this book of English.
And his education was limited too.
Well, he got up to 6th grade, and then he failed out. And he came to the U.S. and just learned as he went, and then spoke several languages, at any rate.
He achieved the American dream.
He achieved the American dream big time.
And the legacy too is that he was a writer, and then you have sort of also embraced the legacy as well with bestseller Amazon books.
Well, yeah, no, it's been a journey. I mean, in a very different way. I'm very blessed, obviously, to be able to be passionate about what I do, which has been about spreading respect in the workplace, and again, most recently, of course, this book. And feel like people say this all the time, but feel like you're making a difference in the world, And so, and a very specific, concrete business example would be. I worked with this global company. There was a satellite office in Mexico City, only 9 people in this little office. The business development person and the sales person had not spoken in months because the one left the other off an email. And for me, it's all about respect, so he felt disrespected. But imagine in an office of 9 people when 2 people aren't speaking. They're at an industry conference calling on the same clients.
Right.
And so, I come down and my job is to get them to collaborate. Like, they don't have to kumbaya and love each other, right? But in a professional setting, I always ask people, why are we here? Right. And here's for the mission of the organization, for the vision of the organization. And your behaviors are either contributing to and furthering that or detracting from it.
Right.
So we need to create this kind of a respectful environment, and here's what it looks like.
Right. So how did that go when you went down there? I mean, 2 out of 9, that's almost 25% of the business was not speaking to one another. How did you put that bridge together
Well,
and then that relationship?
yeah, and I talk about this in the book. So one of the most important things, I think, for people to really get the impact that has on the rest of the team,
Right.
and walking on eggshells. And people are pretty egocentric by nature, right? Narcissistic. So I'm just focused on the fact that we don't get along, I don't like you, and I don't want to talk to you, because when there's a loss of respect, communication just goes out the window.
Right.
So there's a real breakdown.
Right.
So now I'm relying on my coworkers to have to carry the message. And it just gets so tense and awkward. So first thing is helping people become present to the adverse consequences of this not talking or collaborating on others. And then, helping people to understand, I think, fundamentally, empathy, how we come to different views, and we do personality assessment work and, kind of team building, team effectiveness training. And at the end of the day, you just sit down with them and just talk about, you make choices in life. So we can understand and interpret what's gone on in the past, how we've gotten to where we've gotten to, but then fundamentally, what matters.
I think you should run for office.
Yeah, well,
we could use your message in the world today. Just everything that you're saying not only is impactful in the workplace, but is also much needed in the world today.
Yeah.
And it's just the way the world is conducting itself. It just seems that everyone doesn't want to listen to the messages that are out there or see another perspective, whether it be political or something in the workplace. And people are just shutting down and just digging in deeper and not really listening.
Yeah.
So I think your message is so timely and so much needed right now.
And that's why a copy of the book is being sent to every U.S. senator right now. Just dropping them at the mailbox.
I would personally deliver it. I mean, it's much needed, this message.
Yeah, there are all kinds of conversations that are and aren't taking place, and when they're taking place, they're so divisive.
Yeah. And
it's not advancing. I mean, it's kind of sad, right? What's going on in our country right now.
It is. I feel like a lot of let me rephrase. I've known you now for a long time. I won't say how long. It's been a very long time. We grew up in the same hometown, and I've known you since you were a kid. And you were just always this way, where you have always been such a respectful, nice guy. And I think also growing up in a small town that we did also fostered communication with our neighbors. We grew up with a lot of support, and we realized how important it is to be a community. And that's really the value that we were blessed to have by growing up in this area. Fast forward, I'm now in Manhattan. I'm a lawyer by background.
It's a little
I don't admit
different.
it often yet. Now I'm a lawyer and I'm in the workplace. And a lot of times the message with some of the companies like, eat what you kill and be divisive.
Yeah.
And it really does derail a company when all people are not working together, but some companies don't want to embrace that message. And what would you say to a company that really goes at it and just doesn't really want to have their employees or their senior management work together? Tell me some of the pitfalls that you can foresee in a company that's led in that type of manner.
Yeah, well, by the way, I always go to values.
Yeah.
Personally and professionally. So it's like, what matters to you?
Yes.
And if what matters to you is people just hunting and killing and all that,
right?
Then that's okay. If that's what you want, your company to be, that's fine, I guess. I wouldn't want to work in an environment like that.
Who wants to work in a company where you're terrorizing your employees?
Yeah.
To me, that's never a great business plan, right?
No, it's not. I mean, look, all the values obviously in finding great people and then helping to develop them. I worked with one sales organization, and there was one gentleman who was absolutely toxic. So he would actually claim to have had meetings and identify those as active leads so that the other team members couldn't then call on those clients.
That's really
Is that in the best interest of the organization?
It's not in anyone's best interest. And,
Right.
and also lying never really fosters a lot of trust, which you kind of need in that type of environment to work collaboratively.
Yeah. So,
So let's take him as an example. So what do you do when you encounter an employee like that? Or let's call him a problem employee.
Personally, I'll be straight with you, I would fire him.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's inconsistent with the culture. And there's a law firm with whom I've interviewed before, quite a large law firm. And the gentleman who's his senior partner really lives it from the place of respect. So you could be a senior partner, and if you speak disrespectfully to a junior clerk or somebody in the mailroom, whatever it is, you get one warning, that's it, and then you're fired. I mean, that just matters in life.
It does. It truly does.
And when you have organizations say, well, they bring a lot of money in, or it's just their personality, or they have a set of skills that are so valuable that we can't lose them. you can't keep them.
Yeah.
You just can't afford to keep them. And overall, by the way, as a leader, people lose respect in you.
Right. Right.
When you allow bad behavior to go on, when you allow somebody to be intimidating to others, the cost is the respect that people have for you.
That's right. That's right. And it's a bigger cost. And you're right. Without that respect, you really can't run an organization. It's just a lot of people that have their own agendas, but not really united.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really, help the company. I mean, particularly also in COVID, how do you see your message resonating as people can't go to the workplace anymore and they can't all gather together and have that collaborative meeting in person?
Well, so you miss the micro interactions, which foster relatedness.
That's right.
Right, and connectedness.
Going out to lunch together, going down the hall, the proverbial water cooler conversation.
100%.
Yes.
So, as an example, is in the past we might have passed each other in the hall, and I might have seen, Sharon, that you looked gloomy in some way, which you never do. So I may notice, hey, Sharon, what's going on with you?
Right.
We may have a conversation, something going on with my kid or whatever it is. We lose all that.
Right, the bonding.
All that, yeah.
Yes.
And so I think, and the other thing is during COVID, I mean, as probably everybody knows who's watching this, there's this burnout that's occurring.
Oh, yes.
And the stress level. And I was on the phone with an HR manager yesterday who was just so upset because there are no boundaries anymore.
None. Especially when you're working from home. It's like you're working 24/7. You really can't turn it off. People can just expect to find you because they know you're not going anywhere in a global pandemic.
So, yeah, and the way I look right now, and I know we don't have a lot of time, is, pre-COVID, this image of like we're all flying on an airplane, and a personal professional, we're all flying on an airplane, and all of a sudden this bolt of lightning hit us. And we started going upside down. Our instruments didn't work anymore. We couldn't find our way. And then finally we have, right? We figured it out, and now we're starting to descend through the clouds. And the landscape looks different. And I'm not sure where we're going to land.
Yeah.
We're not going to land where we took off from.
Yeah.
The world's different, and it's going to be different, and we need to figure that out, and particularly in the workplace. And it goes back to issues of respect.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting times.
That's right.
But what you got to do at the end of the day? You got to talk about it.
We got to talk about it. That's the most important part. Paul, thank you so much. I think it's amazing that you've done so well. I'm so proud to have known you for as long as I've known you from my hometown. I just feel so excited to be where we are right now and see how much you've accomplished. And what really is phenomenal is that I've known you since you were a kid. You really do walk the talk, and you really do talk about it. So you absolutely are somebody who delivers the message and does exactly what you say that you will do in your book. So
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to meet.
Absolutely. I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely.
Take
We all
care.
need to continue. Thanks, Paul. How did that come out?
That's good. It's all good. It's easy. We're so